Wait, before you kick aside that dull, weathered rock on your next hike, watch this first. Every single day, amateur rockhounds are walking directly over emerald deposits because the indicator rocks look absolutely worthless. I'm talking about 5 specific host rocks and mineral indicators that signal gem-quality emeralds hiding below the surface, and you've probably ignored dozens of them without a second glance. The gem industry doesn't want you knowing this, but emeralds don't announce themselves. Their presence is revealed by ordinary-looking rocks that professionals have trained themselves to recognize instantly. In this video, I'm revealing the exact identification system that separates professional emerald prospectors from weekend hobbyists who find nothing. Your next rockhounding trip could change everything if you know what to look for. Let's find emeralds. Now I'm going to deliver exactly what I promised: the complete breakdown of all 5 indicator rocks, their specific visual characteristics, plus the field testing methods that confirm emerald proximity with certainty. By the end of this video, you'll have the same recognition system that professional prospectors use to target emerald-bearing zones. Indicator rock number 1, black biotite schist. This is the big one. Black biotite schist is the primary host rock for some of the world's most valuable emerald deposits, and most beginners walk right past it because it looks like worthless, flaky black stone. Visually, you're looking at a dark gray to black metamorphic rock with a distinctive shiny, platy texture. The surface catches light in layers, almost like stacked sheets of black mica. It feels slippery when you run your finger across it. That soapy, sliding sensation is unmistakable. The rock breaks along flat planes, creating thin sheets rather than blocky fragments. Weight-wise, it's moderate density, heavier than sandstone but lighter than basalt. Most people mistake it for ordinary slate or just generic black rock and keep walking. But here's what most people don't know. Biotite schist forms under the exact metamorphic conditions that create emeralds: moderate pressure and temperature in the presence of chromium and vanadium. When you find black biotite schist, you're standing in a zone that experienced the geological recipe for emerald formation. The schist itself isn't valuable, but it's the equivalent of a neon sign pointing to potential emerald pockets. Here's your identification checklist for black biotite schist. Black to dark gray coloration with metallic sheen. Layered platy texture that reflects light in sheets. Breaks along flat cleavage planes into thin flakes. Slippery, almost greasy feel when touched. Contains visible mica crystals that sparkle when rotated in sunlight. Often shows slight foliation or banding patterns. Makes a distinctive sliding sound when pieces are rubbed together. The field test is simple but definitive. Take a steel knife or nail and try to peel off a thin layer. Biotite schist will separate into flexible, paper-thin sheets that bend slightly before breaking. This is your confirmation. Compare this to slate, which breaks into rigid fragments, or hornblende schist, which won't separate into thin, flexible layers. Professional emerald prospectors specifically target black biotite schist formations in known emerald districts. That tells you something about its importance. When you map a biotite schist zone, you're mapping potential emerald territory. Now let's move to the second indicator, one that actually contains chromium. Indicator rock number 2, Chromite. Chromite is what I call the chemical signature rock. This one fools even experienced rockhounds because it looks like dozens of other dark, heavy minerals. You're examining a black to brownish-black mineral with a metallic to submetallic luster. It's deceptively heavy for its size. Pick up a piece the size of your thumbnail and you'll immediately notice the weight. The surface is often dull or slightly weathered to brown, but fresh breaks reveal a dark gray metallic interior. Crystal form is rare in the field. You'll typically find it as massive chunks or small octahedral crystals embedded in host rock. The texture is granular to compact. Most people dismiss it as magnetite or just generic black mineral without testing it. But here's the critical detail that changes everything. Chromite is chromium ore, the essential ingredient that gives emeralds their green color. When you find chromite in metamorphic rocks, you've located a chromium source. If that chromium migrated into barrel-forming conditions during metamorphism, emeralds formed. This is the geochemical connection professionals look for. Here's your identification sequence for chromite. Black to brownish-black color with metallic luster on fresh surfaces. Exceptionally heavy specific gravity, noticeably heavier than similar-sized rocks. Weakly magnetic or non-magnetic, distinguishes it from magnetite. Brown streak on unglazed porcelain, hardness of 5.5, steel knife scratches it with difficulty. Often found in association with serpentinite or peridotite. Weathers to brownish surface coating but remains metallic inside. Here's your step-by-step field procedure. First, test the weight. Chromite should feel substantially heavier than expected. Second, check with a magnet. Chromite shows weak to no magnetic response, while magnetite pulls strongly. Third, if you have a streak plate, chromite produces a brown streak, not black. This combination confirms chromite identification with certainty. Professional miners specifically target chromite-bearing serpentinite zones in emerald districts. The presence of chromite means chromium was available during metamorphism, exactly what emerald formation requires. When you find chromite near mica schist or pegmatites, pay attention. That's a high-potential zone. Here's where it gets interesting. The third indicator is often found in direct contact with emeralds. Indicator rock number 3, white calcite veins. White calcite veins represent the transportation system, the actual pathways that moved mineralizing fluids through rock formations. This is where emeralds crystallize. You're looking at bright white to cream-colored veins cutting through darker host rocks. The calcite appears massive and granular, often with a sugary or slightly translucent texture. It's notably soft. Your fingernail can scratch it if you press hard enough. The veins range from pencil-thin to several inches wide, cutting across the foliation of the host schist. In sunlight, calcite shows a distinctive pearly luster. Many calcite veins contain small pockets or vugs, hollow spaces where crystals can form. Weight is light compared to most rocks. People often ignore white veins completely, assuming they're just quartz or worthless white rock. Here's what surprises most people. These calcite veins are hydrothermal conduits. Hot, mineral-rich fluids traveled through these pathways during metamorphism. When those fluids carried beryllium and encountered chromium-bearing host rocks, emeralds crystallized within or adjacent to the calcite veins. The calcite itself dissolves easily, often leaving emerald crystals behind in weathered outcrops. Your identification checklist for calcite veins: bright white to cream coloration, soft enough to scratch with a copper coin or your fingernail, granular, sugary texture on broken surfaces, often contains small cavities or vugs, effervesces vigorously when you drop dilute acid on it, pearly luster when light hits cleavage surfaces, cuts across host rock foliation at various angles. The home test is simple but definitive. Calcite reacts vigorously with weak acid. Carry a small bottle of white vinegar on your field trips. Drop a few drops on suspected calcite. It will fizz and bubble immediately. Quartz shows no reaction. Dolomite bubbles weakly. Vigorous effervescence confirms calcite. This test costs virtually nothing and works in the field. Professional emerald prospectors systematically sample calcite veins in biotite schist zones.
They know that emeralds form at the contact between calcite veins and chromium-bearing schist. When you find white calcite veins cutting through black biotite schist near chromite occurrences, you've identified a triple indicator zone. That's high-priority territory. Wait until you see what the fourth indicator tells you about depth and formation conditions. Indicator. Rock number 4. Talc schist. Talc schist is the texture indicator. It tells you about the metamorphic environment with absolute precision. This one feels distinctive in your hand. You're examining a pale green to white, sometimes grayish rock with an unmistakably greasy, soapy feel. The texture is the giveaway. When you handle talc schist, it feels slippery and soapy like no other rock. It's soft enough to scratch with your fingernail easily. The rock shows foliation in wavy, contorted layers, rather than straight planes. It's lightweight and often has a slightly silky sheen on foliation surfaces. Fresh surfaces are pale greenish-white. Weathered surfaces turn brownish. Most people who find it think it's interesting, but have no idea it indicates emerald-forming conditions. But here's what most people don't know about talc schist. Talc forms from the metamorphism of magnesium-rich rocks, like serpentinite and peridotite, the same ultramafic rocks that provide chromium for emerald formation. When you find talc schist, you're in a zone where ultramafic rocks underwent metamorphism. That metamorphic environment, combined with beryllium sources from nearby pegmatites, creates emerald potential. Here's your identification checklist. Pale green, white, or gray coloration. Distinctive soapy, greasy feel that's unmistakable. Very soft, easily scratched by fingernail. Hardness 1. Wavy, contorted foliation patterns. Silky or pearly luster on foliation surfaces. Lightweight for its size, often associated with serpentinite or altered ultramafic rocks. Here's your verification process. The feel test is diagnostic. Nothing else feels like talc. Run your fingers across the surface. That slippery, soapy sensation confirms talc content. Second, test hardness. Your fingernail should scratch it easily, leaving a white mark. Third, observe the color. Pale greenish-white is typical for talc schist. This combination is definitive. Professional prospectors use talc schist as a regional indicator. When you map talc schist zones, you're mapping areas where ultramafic rocks provided chromium during metamorphism. Combine that information with evidence of beryllium-bearing pegmatites nearby, and you've identified prospective ground. That tells you something about how valuable this recognition skill becomes. Now, let's move to the fifth indicator, the beryllium source rock itself. Indicator rock number 5, Pegmatite dikes. Pegmatite dikes provide the beryllium, the other essential ingredient for emerald formation. This is the chemical complement to chromite. You're looking at very coarse-grained, intrusive rocks cutting through the host formation. Individual crystals are large, typically thumbnail-sized to fist-sized, sometimes larger. The primary minerals are quartz, glassy, and clear to white, feldspar, white to pink, blocky crystals, and mica, black or white, platy crystals. The texture is unmistakably coarse. You can identify individual minerals easily with the naked eye. Pegmatites form dikes or pods, ranging from inches to tens of feet thick. The rock is hard and resistant to weathering, often forming ridges or prominent outcrops. Most people recognize pegmatites, but don't understand their significance for emerald prospecting. Here's the critical detail. Pegmatites form from the last fractions of crystallizing granite magma, concentrating rare elements, including beryllium. When pegmatite fluids intruded into chromium-bearing schist during metamorphism, beryllium and chromium combine to form emeralds at the contact zones. The pegmatite itself rarely contains emeralds. They form in the adjacent schist where pegmatite fluids reacted with chromium-bearing rocks. Your identification checklist for pegmatites. Very coarse crystal size, easily visible individual minerals. Primary minerals, quartz, feldspar, mica. Light-colored overall, white, cream, pink, gray. Forms dikes or pods cutting through host rocks. Hard and resistant, stands out in relief. May contain rare minerals, beryl, tourmaline, garnet. Sharp contacts with host schist. The field test is straightforward. Pegmatites are identified primarily by texture. That coarse, crystalline texture is diagnostic. Examine the crystal size. If individual minerals are thumbnail-sized or larger, you're looking at pegmatite. Second, check the mineral content. If you see large quartz, feldspar, and mica crystals together, that's your confirmation. Third, observe the contact with host rock. Pegmatites show sharp, intrusive contacts. Professional emerald prospectors systematically map pegmatite dikes in chromium-bearing schist zones. They focus their detailed work on the contact zones, within a few feet of where pegmatite meets schist. That's where emeralds form. When you find a pegmatite dike cutting through black biotite schist near chromite occurrences, you've located a primary target. This is high-grade prospecting information. But there's something even more important than recognizing individual indicators: understanding how they combine. The multi-indicator targeting system. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how to use these 5 indicator rocks together to identify high-potential emerald zones using techniques you can apply in the field with minimal equipment. Here's what separates successful emerald prospectors from frustrated beginners. Understanding that single indicators mean little, but multiple indicators in proximity create probability. Professional prospectors use a systematic approach to evaluate emerald potential. Let me break down the complete system. System Component 1. The host rock matrix. Start with black biotite schist. This is your foundation. You need metamorphic schist as the host environment. Without it, the other indicators are irrelevant for emerald prospecting. When you identify biotite schist, you've confirmed the basic geological setting. Map the extent of the schist formation. Emerald zones occur within these schist bodies, not outside them. System Component 2. The chromium source. Locate chromite, or evidence of chromium-bearing ultramafic rocks. This could be chromite crystals, talc schist derived from ultramafics, or direct serpentinite occurrences. Chromium provides the green color in emeralds. Without a chromium source, you can't have emeralds regardless of other favorable conditions. When you find chromium indicators within the biotite schist zone, you've doubled your probability. System Component 3. The beryllium source. Identify pegmatite dikes cutting through the schist formation. Pegmatites provide beryllium, the other essential element. Without beryllium, chromium-bearing rocks won't form emeralds. When you map pegmatites intruding chromium-bearing schist, you've identified the chemical combination required for emerald formation. This is critical. System Component 4. The fluid pathways. Find calcite veins cutting through the host schist, especially near pegmatite contacts. These veins are the plumbing system that transported mineralizing fluids. Emeralds typically form within or immediately adjacent to these calcite veins. When you find calcite veins at the intersection of pegmatites and chromium-bearing schist, you've located a primary target. The probability matrix. Here's your practical classification system. 1 indicator, low probability, geological interest only. 2 indicators in proximity, moderate probability, worth detailed examination. 3 indicators combining, high probability, systematic sampling warranted. 4 or 5 indicators in close proximity, very high probability. This is where professional prospectors focus their work. That's the targeting system that works. Now here's the technique that changed everything for me. Instead of random prospecting, I map indicator rocks systematically. I create a simple field map showing schist extent, chromite locations, pegmatite dikes, and calcite veins. Where these features converge, that's where I concentrate my detailed work. This systematic approach increased my find rate by a factor of 10 compared to random searching. Field verification methods. All right, let's get into the actual field tests you'll use to confirm these indicator rocks with certainty. Test 1. The acid test for calcite. This is critical for identifying calcite veins versus quartz veins. Here's the step-by-step procedure. First, carry a small plastic bottle of white vinegar. 5% acetic acid available at any grocery store for less than $3. Second, use a hammer to expose a fresh surface on suspected calcite. Third, place 2 to 3 drops of vinegar on the fresh surface. Fourth, watch for effervescence. Vigorous, immediate fizzing confirms calcite. Weak or delayed bubbling might be dolomite. No reaction indicates quartz or another non-carbonate mineral. Professional prospectors use this technique constantly because calcite veins are primary emerald hosts, while quartz veins are generally barren. The acid test takes 30 seconds and costs virtually nothing. Test 2. The soap test for talc. The field test is diagnostic. Here's the procedure. First, collect a sample of suspected talc schist. Second, break off a small piece to expose fresh surfaces. Third, rub the fresh surface between your fingers. That distinctive soapy, greasy feel confirms talc content. Fourth, try to scratch it with your fingernail. Talc is soft enough to scratch easily. Compare this to serpentinite, which feels slightly soapy but is much harder. Or chlorite schist, which lacks the extreme soapy feel. Professional geologists use the soap test as an immediate field identification method. That combination of extreme softness and soapy feel is unique to talc-bearing rocks. Test 3. The heft test for chromite. Chromite's high specific gravity makes it distinctive. Here's your process. First, collect a sample of suspected chromite. Second, compare its weight to a similarly sized piece of ordinary rock. Chromite should feel noticeably, surprisingly heavy. Third, test with a magnet. Chromite shows weak or no magnetic attraction, distinguishing it from magnetite, which pulls strongly. Fourth, if you have a streak plate, unglazed porcelain, test the streak. Chromite produces a brown streak, not black. Professional prospectors carry small, rare earth magnets costing less than $5. The combination of high density and weak magnetism confirms chromite identification in the field. Test 4. The scratch test for hardness. This basic test confirms mineral identity. Here's the sequence. First, try scratching with your fingernail. Hardness 2.5. Talc scratches easily. Calcite scratches with pressure. Most rocks resist. Second, try a copper coin. Hardness 3.5. This scratches calcite definitively. Third, try a steel knife. Hardness 5.5. This scratches most minerals except quartz and harder materials. Fourth, try scratching glass. Hardness 5.5. Quartz scratches glass. Calcite doesn't. This hardness testing sequence costs less than $10 for the complete kit: a knife, coin, and glass plate. Professional geologists use this approach for quick field identification. Test 5. The crystal size test for pegmatites. Pegmatite identification is straightforward. First, examine crystal size with the naked eye. If you can clearly identify individual mineral grains larger than rice grains, you're looking at coarse texture. If crystals are thumbnail-sized or larger, that's diagnostic of pegmatite. Second, identify the minerals present. Pegmatites contain large crystals of quartz, glassy, feldspar, blocky white or pink, and mica, platy black or white. Third, examine the contact with host rock. Pegmatites show sharp, intrusive contacts, not gradational transitions. Professional prospectors carry a 10 times hand lens costing $15 to $30. This allows detailed examination of crystal texture and mineral identification. Total investment for complete field testing: less than $50 for everything. Test 6. The foliation test for schist. Schist identification relies on texture. Here's the procedure. First, examine for layering or foliation. Parallel alignment of mineral grains. Schist shows obvious foliation visible to the naked eye. Second, test how the rock breaks. Schist breaks preferentially along foliation planes. Third, identify the minerals present. Biotite schist contains abundant black mica that catches light in layers. Fourth, feel the surface. The platy minerals give schist a distinctive texture. Test 7. The streak. Test for metallic minerals. The streak test identifies dark metallic minerals. First, obtain an unglazed porcelain tile. The back of a bathroom tile works perfectly, costing less than $1. Second, rub suspected chromite across the tile with moderate pressure. Third, observe the streak color. Chromite produces brown. Magnetite produces black. Hematite produces red-brown. The streak color is more diagnostic than the mineral's external appearance. Professional prospectors carry a streak plate constantly. This single-dollar tool distinguishes metallic minerals definitively in seconds. Location and geological context. Here's where it gets interesting. Knowing what indicator rocks look like means nothing if you don't know where to find them. Let me explain the geological context in simple terms that will completely change how you approach emerald prospecting. Emeralds form in very specific geological environments. You're looking for zones where three conditions occurred simultaneously during metamorphism. First, chromium-bearing ultramafic rocks like peridotite or serpentinite provided chromium. Second, beryllium-bearing pegmatites intruded the area, providing beryllium. Third, metamorphic temperatures and pressures reached the right levels, roughly 300 to 700 degrees Celsius, and moderate pressure, to allow emerald crystallization. That intersection of three conditions is rare. That's why emerald deposits are rare. Target Environment 1. Contact Metamorphic Zones. Look for areas where granite intrusions contacted ultramafic or mafic country rocks. These contact zones create the temperature and pressure conditions for metamorphism, while bringing pegmatite fluids into contact with chromium-bearing rocks. Professional prospectors specifically target these contact zones because they combine beryllium sources, pegmatites from the granite, with chromium sources, the ultramafic country rock. Target Environment 2. Regional Metamorphic Belts. Focus on regionally metamorphosed terrains, areas where entire rock sequences underwent metamorphism. These are typically mountain belts or ancient collision zones. Look for black biotite schist formations containing intercalated ultramafic layers or lenses. When pegmatites intruded these metamorphic sequences, emerald formation occurred at favorable intersections. Target Environment 3. Serpentinite schist contact zones. Third, and this is what most people don't know, the contact between serpentinite bodies and mica schist is prime emerald territory. The serpentinite provides chromium. The schist provides the metamorphic host environment. When pegmatite fluids penetrated these contact zones, emeralds formed. Map these contacts systematically, their linear features often extending for miles. Target Environment 4. Pegmatite Swarm Areas. Look for areas where multiple pegmatite dikes intruded schist formations. Professional prospectors call these pegmatite swarms. When numerous pegmatites intruded chromium-bearing schist, the probability of emerald formation multiplied. These are high-priority areas. Target Environment 5. Calcite Vein Zones. This is critical. Target areas where abundant calcite veins cut through biotite schist near pegmatite contacts. The calcite veins are the actual sites of emerald crystallization. Map the vein orientations, trace them laterally, and sample systematically where veins approach pegmatite contacts or chromite occurrences. The indicator system works like this. When you find chromite in talc schist near black biotite schist with calcite veins and pegmatite dikes, every indicator confirms high emerald potential. Multiple indicators together equal high probability. That's the systematic approach professionals use. Advanced recognition techniques. Let's move into advanced recognition techniques that separate successful emerald prospectors from frustrated beginners. Here's the part that surprises most people. The same indicator rocks look dramatically different depending on weathering, alteration, and surface conditions. You need to recognize variations to avoid missing prospective ground. Weathering variation. 1. Surface oxidation. First, understand that chromite weathers to brownish surface coatings while remaining metallic inside. Many beginners dismiss weathered chromite as just brown rock. Break it open. That metallic gray interior confirms chromite. Never judge based solely on surface appearance. Weathering disguises many valuable indicators. Weathering variation. 2. Calcite dissolution. Second, calcite veins dissolve readily in slightly acidic conditions. In outcrop, you might see a linear depression or slot where a calcite vein once existed. The vein dissolved away, potentially leaving emerald crystals behind in the cavity. Professional prospectors specifically examine these dissolution features because emeralds resist weathering better than calcite hosts. Weathering variation. 3. Schist exfoliation. Third, biotite schist weathers by exfoliating, peeling off thin layers along foliation planes. Weathered outcrops often look like stacks of rusty brown flakes. The rust color comes from iron oxidation in biotite. Fresh surfaces underneath remain black with metallic luster. Don't dismiss rusty-looking layered rock without examining fresh breaks. Common mistake. 1. Dismissing white veins.
When you're examining broken rock specimens, train yourself to notice this subtle luster difference. Now let's talk quality indicators because not every diamond is worth pursuing. Gem quality natural diamonds are transparent to translucent with minimal inclusions visible to the naked eye. They might show color, yellow, brown, pink, or even rare blues and greens, but the crystal structure remains clear enough to transmit light. Industrial-grade diamonds, by contrast, are opaque, heavily included, or fractured. They still have value, but measured in tens of dollars rather than hundreds or thousands. Here's how you tell the difference in the field. Hold the suspected diamond up to strong light. Gem-quality material will transmit light, showing internal transparency even if colored. Industrial material blocks light transmission, appearing dark or completely opaque. Common mistakes that cause beginners to miss valuable discoveries? First, dismissing small crystals. A 2mm diamond might not seem impressive, but quality stones at that size can be worth $50 to $100 each. Find several in one location and you've had a genuinely productive day. Second, expecting perfect crystals. Natural diamonds are often etched, dissolved, or partially resorbed by the volcanic material that brought them up. These surface features actually increase confidence that you found a real diamond rather than a simulant. Third, and this is huge, throwing away weathered host rock. Remember that yellow-brown weathered kimberlite we discussed? It looks like worthless clay to most people, but it concentrates diamonds just as readily as fresh material. Never dismiss a specimen based solely on its weathered appearance. Quality assessment and value determination. Now that you know how to confirm genuine diamonds, let's talk about quality assessment. Determining whether your find is gem-quality material worth significant money or industrial-grade material with modest value. The 4 C's of diamond grading apply to rough stones just as they do to cut gems: color, clarity, cut, in this case crystal form, and carat weight. Here's the part that surprises most people. Rough diamond assessment requires different considerations than graded cut stones. Color assessment. Gem-quality diamonds range from colorless, most valuable in white diamonds, through faint yellow or brown tints. Fancy colored diamonds, pinks, blues, greens, and intense yellows, command premium prices even as small rough stones. Hold your diamond against a white background under daylight-balanced light. Can you detect color, and if so, what type? Completely colorless rough diamonds are rare and valuable. Slight yellow or brown tints reduce value in white diamonds but don't eliminate it. Any strongly colored diamond, pink, blue, green, intense yellow, is potentially extremely valuable regardless of size. Clarity assessment. Examine your diamond with a 10 times loupe under strong light. Can you see inclusions, internal features like crystals, fractures, or clouds? Gem-quality diamonds have minimal visible inclusions. Industrial diamonds are heavily included to the point of opacity. Here's your practical classification. If your diamond appears transparent with no visible inclusions at 10 times magnification, you have potentially high-grade material. If you can see some inclusions but the stone remains mostly transparent, you have commercial gem-quality material, still valuable. If the stone is opaque or riddled with fractures, you have industrial-grade material worth considerably less. Crystal form. The shape of your rough diamond affects its potential value because cutting efficiency depends on crystal form. Octahedral crystals offer good cutting yield. Dodecahedral and irregular forms lose more material during cutting, reducing their per-carat value. Perfect crystals are rare and desirable, but don't dismiss damaged or partial crystals. Even fractured diamonds have value if the fragments are clean and transparent. Professional diamond cutters can work with imperfect material,